might be the first winter's night in the cabin for this year. I'll give you a look eventually at what things look like outside. We had a bit of a snowstorm yesterday, nothing much, a few centimeters of snow that changed to rain. Didn't rain it all off though, but it changed to rain. And then overnight the temperature dropped considerably. Trying to find the utensil that I want here. Overnight the temperature dropped considerably. It's -8 outdoors now and quite windy, so the wind chill factor is even worse. And it's supposed to stay cold and windy overnight tonight, and tomorrow is supposed to be a serious snowstorm, as much as possibility of, anyway, 30 centimeters in this area. So I'm out to spend the night, cook my dinner, probably have my breakfast in the morning, and we'll see what things look like in the morning. But I'm going to make a small loaf of bread and try baking it in the Coleman camp oven on top of the Yodel stove. I've never done that before. We'll see whether it works or not. This, I mixed the flour, the salt, and the yeast before I left the house. It's 2 cups of flour, a teaspoon of dry yeast, and a half teaspoon of salt. I've had people comment before that I don't use any kind of fat or whatever in my bread. Well, I do at times. I made dinner rolls to take to a Christmas party. Martha Stewart's dinner rolls always turn out beautifully, and they've got everything in them: milk, eggs, butter. But when I make bread, I tend to do what used to be the law in France, I guess, before the European Common Market, which has ruined many things. But it used to be in France that you couldn't call a product bread if it had anything in it other than yeast, salt, flour, and water. You had to call it something else, a brioche or whatever, but you couldn't sell it as bread. And I think still artisanal bakers in France, that would be very true to this day. But, however, in the French bakeries you also see some of the junk that you see over here now. I blame it on the EU. I don't know what French people blame it on, but there are still some wonderful bakeries in France, don't get me wrong. And I think maybe I just add enough water, as you can see, till it formed into a dough. Now I'm going to knead it for a few minutes. I have a little extra flour if I need to add a little extra flour, but something is uneven here. I guess this cutting board that I'm using is jiggling back and forth. Got it quite warm in here. The thermometer says 22, but that's on the table, so I guess that's down at table level. Where I'm standing, the fire is really heating things up. I've had the fire going for several hours. I'm doing errands and whatever, and getting ready to come out, so I've been adding wood to it periodically, adding bio bricks to it periodically. Well, I will continue to knead this, but it must be pretty boring watching me do it, so I won't make you watch. It'll go back in this container once I finish kneading to do its first rise of close to an hour. Carrying on with the cooking theme here, I thought I would try some chocolate chip cookies from a mix. I've torn the brand name off. There it's on the bottom. Betty Crocker chocolate chip cookies. It seemed a lot easier than carrying all of those ingredients over here anyway. To that you add a half cup of butter or margarine to the mix. And that's margarine that I'm using. And 1 egg. You can crack the egg before he came out. Mix until you have a soft dough. As warm as it in here, as it is in here, the margarine is quite soft. I said not to melt it, but to have soft margarine, and that certainly is soft. Still, it only says 22 degrees. I've got the windows open to cool me down, so I'm sure it's warmer than 22 in here. Although I don't keep my house very warm, so I'm just not used to the heat in the wintertime, I guess. Well, I will finish mixing these up and come back to you in a minute. These are supposed to bake at 350. So far I've only managed to get the little oven up to around 300, or exactly 300 I guess, according to the little oven thermometer that I have in there. I don't know how accurate that is. These are supposed to be placed a couple inches apart, and it of course says in a greased pan. I'm using parchment paper, much easier for the cleanup. I heard something interesting about parchment paper on a program just a couple of days ago. Might have been Martha Stewart, actually. Martha Stewart Bakes. Parchment paper is safe in the oven up to 500 degrees. It does get a bit crispy when I use it different times, but there's no danger of it burning or catching fire anyway, unless the oven is over 500 degrees. Well, I think what I'm going to do is put these in the oven at 300 and just leave them a longer period of time. They may not brown, but I think they should cook anyway. We'll know shortly. Well, they're more blonde than brown, but I think they're done. They're a soft cookie anyway. They've been out for, oh, I don't know, 10 minutes or so that they're cool. But that worked at around 300 degrees, so I hope the same will work for the bread. There's enough here, enough dough left to make probably another couple of pans full, but I think all I will do is these 6. I have to go back over to the house before dark anyway to take care of the hens and things one more time, so I'll put the extra dough in the refrigerator at the house and cook it some other time. On the Betty Crocker package it said not to eat the raw cookie dough. So if I die before morning, it's not Betty's fault. I ate the raw cookie dough. I can't stay out of raw cookie dough. Be back in a few minutes with the bread. Well, the dough has risen enough, at least I know the yeast is working, I guess. Just a little bit of flour there to knead it once again. Going to be sort of a free-form loaf, so I guess that will do for shaping it. Same piece of parchment paper, I just turned it over. And I have a tea towel here somewhere that I was going to cover that with. Anyway, I'll cover it with a tea towel and put it closer to the stove and let it rise for an hour and a half or so before I try baking it. Well, that's my loaf under a tea towel. I've just placed it there. It's going to take an hour and a half anyway until it rises enough to go in the oven. And I've got a pretty good fire going in the stove. And that's the Coleman camp oven that I bake the cookies in and hope to bake the bread in. I just checked the temperature inside and I've now managed to get it up to 325. According to the little oven thermometer, so that's a bit better, but I would normally bake bread at 375 to 400 or so, so once again it's going to take longer and it probably isn't going to get as brown as I'd like it to get, but it will cook it, I'm sure. Just looking out the window, give you a look at some of the little birds that are coming and going from the feeder, but also give you an idea of the small amount of snow that we have. Really only a few inches, 3 inches maybe, something like that. Might have been a bit more, but it was rained off. But as I say, they are saying we could get up to 30 centimeters tomorrow. I'll tell you better after we've got it, though. Around here, the predictions for snow and whatever are not terribly accurate. These little sparrows have been flying over and getting on the empty window box next to the window so they can look in at me. I don't know who's watching who, if I'm watching them or they're watching me. Turn around here and show you out the window here. Guess that'll come into focus. Bloop. Yeah. That's the solar panels with just a bit of ice on the bottom. Well, I guess during that storm yesterday it melted down to the bottom and froze, and I didn't like to scrape it off. I was scared I might break the glass. So I swept off the light snow and left the ice at the bottom. That will melt in a day or two probably, but not all that much snow. Not yet anyway. Well, I guess I have at least half a head there. I can see the viewfinder from the camera, but not all that clearly across the other side of the table. I'm just making an entry into the cabin log book, something that I do following what Trevor Fillmore does. If you're watching, Trevor, we need to see another video from your cabin. I've just been over to the house and done my last rounds at 3 coops. The coop with the roosters in it, and the coop with the hens and a couple of roosters, and the coop with the 14 quail. Giving everybody a little bit of scratch feed, gathered eggs, make sure they've got lots of food and water just in case this storm should actually happen. Here it's still, at the cabin it says -7 outside. At the house it was reading -9. Could be just the difference in the two thermometers, I don't know. The one at the house is newer. If that makes it more accurate or not, I couldn't tell you. But it's still quite clear. The sun is about to set. It's 4:15. The sun is still up. It won't actually set for another hour or so yet, but it's down below the tree level here, so getting quite shady outside, and my solar lights are working wonderfully, so far anyway. The bread is rising nicely. I'll be able to put that in another 20 minutes or so. I think I'll let it rise just a bit more. And the oven, still it's around 325, so hopefully that will cook bread. Just slower, I guess. So I'll make my entry here, first entry in the logbook for this visit, and get back to you in a few minutes when it's time to put the bread in the oven. Well, the fire doesn't usually rage like that. I just had the door open and took the poker and broke up one of the bio bricks in there, so it sort of flamed up. But I think my bread is going in now. You can see that I've taken a knife and just cut a slit down the center of it to hopefully help it rise a bit, although I don't know if it's going to get much what they call oven spring, because the oven isn't all that hot. Yeah, the oven is still saying. The oven is still saying around 325, so I will keep it going anyway, and probably won't bother opening the door for an hour, because at a hotter oven I normally would cook that bread for, well, close to 40 minutes anyway, so we'll see what happens in about an hour's time. Well, for dinner this evening I hope to have fish chowder. Brought out some frozen fish, which is now partially thawed. In this I've already cut up a couple of medium-sized potatoes, peeled and cut them up. And this is one of my yellow onions that I complain about constantly. Nothing wrong with the flavor, they're a good tasting onion, but don't care for the shape of the things. I haven't figured out the best way to peel one yet or cut it up, if there is a best way. Anyway, I have my catalog from W.H. Perrin, W.H. Perrin, I don't know which is which here. It's in Quebec if it's supposed to be a French name or an English name. But that's where I get my onion sets from. And I had great luck 2 years ago with what they call a Spanish onion. To me, they didn't grow to look like what we'd call a Spanish onion when you buy it in the grocery store here. But nevertheless, they were excellent. So I'm going back to those. I have enough of these, though, left to last. Oh, heavens, I don't know. Probably got enough to last 2 months yet. They seem to be storing quite well, but they just annoy me when I go to use them, that's all. That will do. I just sharpened this cheap knife. I guess it is cutting better. Very cheap set of knives that I have out here. I think sharpening it helped it a bit. Can't put the chowder on to start cooking until the bread comes out of the oven. I could do it on the Coleman propane, but I want to try to do as much out here this time cooking with the wood stove. With my previous wood stove, the one that wasn't terribly efficient, I couldn't cook on it at all. You could eventually get a tea kettle to boil on it, and that was about it. Now that will do there until I'm ready to add some water and put it on the stove, I guess. Well, it's not completely white, at least it's got a bit of color to it. I don't think I dare leave it any longer, so we will say that that's done, I guess. And as soon as I get the oven off the top of the stove, I'm going to start cooking my chowder. It's just the onion and the potato, and enough water to, well, not even cover it, just to come up around it. You don't want a lot of water, it's going to have milk added later. I'll add some salt and pepper and get that boiling. Well, the potatoes have been cooking for, I don't know, 20 minutes or so, I guess. And they're relatively tender. The fish that I'm using is haddock. That's what we use here for a fish chowder. If you can see that or not, the brand name is Highliner. It's just a boughten package of frozen fish fillets. And Highliner is an excellent brand name. The quality is very good. I think I have 3 small fillets in here. They're partially thawed, probably mostly thawed, but I've been trying to keep them as cool as possible. I won't cut them up, I'll lay them on top of the potatoes. Oops. And let them steam until they're done. And then I'll break them up. I just checked and the fish is done. And now I'm going to add milk. You've probably seen recipes, probably how you make your own fish chowder. You use cream or milk or whatever. Well, in my family, and here I think in most of this community, we use condensed milk rather than cream or ordinary milk. It makes a nice creamy base to the soup, the chowder, and it's the one that I prefer, of course, because it's the one that I've always had. So, I don't want it to come to a boil again, but once I add this, I do want it to heat up. So. This can of just room temperature milk, that cooled it down quite a bit. So I'll leave it for another few minutes on the stove. Now the chowder is done, I guess, quite nicely. I'll have a bowl. As I said before, I just didn't let it come to a boil again, just let it heat. And I don't know if, depending on where you're from, if you know what those are or not. They're called oyster crackers. I've never been able to find them in a Canadian store. I get mine over in Maine, so perhaps they're just a New England thing. We add them to the top of any kind of a chowder, clam chowder, fish chowder, seafood chowder, whatever. And now I'll give this a try. I guess you can see most of me again. I always seem to cut the top of my head off for some reason. The new bread is quite good. I already had a slice of it. Not quite as brown as I would like it to be, but it's good. And that Highliner brand, I'm not being paid by Highliner to say that, but if you see Highliner brand frozen haddock in your grocery store, in your grocery store anywhere, it's usually quite good. I've been told, I don't know if it's true or not, but I've been told that it's frozen right on the ship that caught it. They own a factory type ship or whatever that catches the fish, and it's frozen within a few hours, so it's really fresh when it's frozen. And that is very good. And the fish is very nice and fresh. Well, later on this evening I'll have a cup of tea and try one of those cookies, so I'll come back and talk to you some more then. Waiting for the kettle to boil to make tea, and I remembered something that was in the manual that came with the Yodel wood stove. Creosote will build up on the glass if you aren't burning the stove properly at a hot enough temperature. And until today, it did have some creosote on the glass, and the instruction book that came with the stove said, "Don't clean it. It isn't necessary to clean it. When you burn the stove hot enough, the creosote will burn off." Well, that has happened. I have a nice clear glass that I can view the fire with there now. As soon as the kettle boils, I'm going to have a cup of tea. It's 8:10. There are stars out, so it hasn't really clouded over, and I don't know if I mentioned it or not, but the forecast has been revised downward a bit from a possibility of 30 centimeters to now they're saying 15 to 25 centimeters, but not a big difference, I guess. If we get it, it's still a bunch of snow to shovel, if I didn't already say that. Anyway, I will come back as soon as I have a cup of tea here. Well, I guess my tea is steeped, and I've got one of my chocolate chip cookies ready to go here. They didn't come out half bad, actually. I like them a little on the chewy side, and if they'd have been in any longer, I think the bottoms would have burnt. They're just a nice brown color at this point, so that worked. I am reading an Ian Rankin book. I don't know if any of you out there are Ian Rankin readers or not, but this is his latest book called Even Dogs in the Wild, and it's another Detective Rebus book. If you've watched the PBS series on Detective Rebus, the murder mystery series, I thought perhaps that the last book that he wrote was the end of Rebus. He didn't kill him off, but he retired him. And this is an excellent book. I always like Ian's writing anyway. And I think I have read all of the Rebus stories. And I won't give you the plot other than to say that Even Dogs in the Wild, there is a dog involved in this, just haven't figured out how it figures into the plot yet. And he has brought Rebus back as a consultant. He's retired, but he knows the major criminal in this story because he's the same criminal that's been in a lot of the Ian Rankin Rebus stories. So about halfway through, and it is an excellent read. So if you read Ian Rankin, his new book is out, and I would recommend it. I'm going to have my tea and my chocolate chip cookie. It's only 8:30, but I'm probably going to go to bed and read, I guess. And I'll see you in the morning. Still, it's quite calm out. We have stars. As I've said before, the forecast is saying that we're going to get the storm still, but I guess that will hopefully won't start until tomorrow morning. I'll get some chores done with the various birds again in their coops before I have to be going around in a lot of snow. Well, I will see you in the morning. Good night. Well, good morning, everybody. It's been daylight now for an hour or so, I guess. And the snow started just at daylight. It's still not much. I'll show you in a few minutes, but the flakes are getting larger all the time. My coffee's on and perking. I'm going to put my oatmeal on. And this is a mixture the same as I usually cook my oatmeal in my rice cooker. I usually put oatmeal on before I go to bed. The rice cooker has a timer on it, and it comes on and starts to cook the oatmeal. When I get up, it's all ready. This is, well, makes one generous portion, I guess, but it's 3/4 of a cup of the large oats, the regular oats, not the minute kind. 3/4 of a cup of water and 3/4 of a cup of milk. And to that I add a pinch of salt and some brown sugar. It's all there, so when it finishes cooking, it's all ready to eat. The coffee is perking, as I said. I'll show you in just a second. Coffee and oatmeal started. I can't do toast on the wood stove. It just doesn't get hot enough for the camp toaster. So that will be the first time that I use a little bit of gas since I came out here yesterday. Coffee smells very good. The fire didn't go out. I think around 4 a.m. I got up and put a couple of more bio bricks in it. And then 8 o'clock or so this morning, it had burnt down quite a bit. It wasn't cold in here. It was starting to get a little cooler. It was down to 19 degrees in here. Very hot in here, unfortunately, with the wood stove. And I added a couple of more bricks and opened the draft up, and in no time it was burning away again. Well, let's have a look outside at the snow. Well, not much of a snowstorm yet, but it is started anyway. I haven't had the radio on to listen to the news. See whether we're still predicted to get the 15 to 25 centimeters or not. You can hear the birds, and I can also hear every once in a while the foghorn on the northern end of the island at the lighthouse. The visibility would be reduced and the foghorn comes on automatically when the snowstorm starts. Still lots of red berries on my rose bush there. The chickadees were in it the other day, and they're not very shy at all. I could stand quite close to them and watch what they were doing. They weren't picking off a berry and taking it away. They were. It was a milder day, so they weren't frozen. They were tearing them open and eating the seeds from inside the berry, which is how this rose bush, I guess, is getting moved all over the island. Birds eating the seeds and dropping them everywhere. My noisy toaster is glowing red, so I guess it must be ready to put the bread on. I always find this gas burner so noisy. It does a good job of toasting bread. I think this might be the first time I've ever toasted homemade bread on it, so it may take a bit longer. I heard the beginning of a squawk at the end of that last clip. That was my very sensitive smoke detector. I don't have to worry of dying of smoke inhalation out here. The first crumb off the toast had hit off the bread, it hit the toaster and was producing a bit of smoke. And my smoke detector let me know all about it. Time for breakfast, I guess. The oatmeal is ready. I put a little butter on top. Why not, eh? I like a little butter on my oatmeal. It doesn't take very long, and it's cooked nicely and already has the milk and the sugar in it. So I guess I'll have my breakfast. I brought out some of my homemade blueberry jam. It was getting so warm in here last night that it was melting, so I put it outside. Might have frozen a little bit, but not frozen now anyway. I've had it back in for a while. It's still snowing, but just like what I showed you a little while ago, it's not coming down very hard yet, and there isn't, at least out here, there doesn't appear to be any wind. So I have to listen to the radio and see what is predicted for this now. It might have changed. Birds have been here, just coming daylight. The blue jays and my squirrel were both in the bird feeder outside the window here. Well, I think I might spend part of the day out here anyway. I'll have to go up to the house soon to take care of the chickens. But I think I'll come back out and enjoy the fire and see how bad the storm gets. Well, it's now 1:45. I've been gone up to the house for, well, better than 2 hours, I guess. And the fire hasn't exactly gone out, I don't think, anyway. Now I still see live coals back in there. And usually at this stage it can be reclaimed. We'll see what happens this time. Oh yes, nice bed of coals. Just put that one bio brick on top of them and then open the draft up completely. I don't know if you can see or not, but as soon as you close it up and open that draft up, I can actually see flame already around the new bio brick that I put in there. Very efficient little stove, and it holds the heat very well, and it's easy to get the fire going again, even if it looks like it's almost out, I guess. Zoom in a little more there. You can, yeah. Well, I took all of the dishes over that I managed to dirty out here and washed them and brought them back. I've had a shower. I feel almost human again. I don't know. I'll discuss in a few minutes over lunch whether I'm going to stay out here again tonight or not. I have some reasons in both directions as to whether I would like to, and then I have a reason too as to why I probably shouldn't. That worked very well. About 5 minutes later, and the fire's going nicely. I'll let it get going really good before I close the damper down a little bit, but got the tea kettle on to make a cup of tea to go with lunch, so I'll settle back and do some reading for a while, I guess. I'm settled in, waiting for the kettle to boil still so I can have lunch. Got to make the next entry, today's entry in the cabin's logbook, and do some reading here with my iPad. It's snowing, and it's been snowing steadily. Just before I left the house, I shoveled off the little deck and the steps that go up to my kitchen door. Well, 10 centimeters maybe. It's a very fine, light, powdery snow, not heavy at all, but I thought if I shovel it off now, later on there won't be so much to deal with. And my reasoning for thinking that I will go back up and spend the night at the house is this is forecast to stop, basically stop anyway, later this evening. And these forecasts are always for further inland than here. So the storm will probably stop here earlier than what the forecast is giving. And the man who plows my driveway will come out with his snowplow just as soon as the storm is over, because he has a lot of driveways to plow. If I'm not there to move my car, it leaves me with a lot of work to do tomorrow. I have to get the car out and clean off the parking spot where I leave the car. There's room for maybe 3 cars where I leave my car. So I think I will probably go back to the house because I suspect sometime before midnight I'll be out moving my car after he starts plowing. So I will come back when I'm ready to have lunch, but right now I'm going to do some writing and some reading. That's the first time I've seen the cardinal today. He was here last night, well, just coming dark, or even maybe a little bit after dark. So far today there'd only been blue jays, a few sparrows or whatever. That gives you, this is out through the window, by the way. It's not the best of photography. Gives you some kind of an idea of how much snow is down so far. Not very much, and it is that light, dry, fluffy kind, thankfully. Here's a blue jay. The blue jays are usually hoarders. They will fill their throat full of sunflower seeds in particular and leave. But on a day like this, they're not bothering to go find all that stuff that they've hidden somewhere, and they only either take a seed at a time and go over and sit on a tree limb and crack it open and eat it, or they'll stay right there at the feeder, a little chickadee, crack a seed after seed and eat the meat from the inside of the seed. They're more concerned with filling their tummies than they are with hoarding anything up today. Well, if the cardinal comes back, I'll try to get another shot of him. This is the same little tree sparrow that's in the previous couple of clips here. He has sat right there, or she has sat right there under the roof, eating seeds, watching the snow come down for a good half hour, has never left once. Every once in a while a chickadee or another sparrow joins him for a few minutes, but he knows a good spot when he's found it, I guess. Well, I was talking away here and the camera beeped and tells me that its memory card is full, so I've deleted some of the earlier stuff that I'd forgotten to delete off the memory card, and hopefully it'll give me a few more minutes here. Lunch today is a gourmet treat. That is lobster. My next door neighbor, very good too, a couple of days after Christmas, knocked on my door and gave me 2 fresh live lobsters. So I've cooked them and shelled them, and this is what we call a lobster roll here. No lettuce in mine, it's all meat, along with some celery and I think a shallot, mayonnaise, and some of the Espelette pepper, of course. I'm using that in everything now. Well, I probably have one of my chocolate chip cookies before I finish here as well. I tried to get another clip of the cardinal, and he's very skittish. As soon as I moved to turn the camera on, he flew away. Not at all like that sparrow. I was going to tell you earlier that when I was up to the house, one of the things that I'm doing is I'm tending a cheese that I'm making. If you're following my series on the easy to make at home cheeses, this is the most complicated that I've attempted so far. It's called triple creme, and that's a camembert or a brie type cheese. It has that white rind mold on the outside of the cheese and a soft cheese in the center. Well, I have it to the point where it is aging and starting to grow that mold. And when I checked on it, they're sitting on a thing called drying mats for cheese. Very fine plastic mesh. And the mold was growing down through the mesh. So when I tried to turn the cheese, I pulled off a lot of the mold, and I panicked. I sent Andy at McDowell Manor an email and Australia. Andy is a very good cheesemaker, has done a lot of videos. And I also sent an email to the company where I buy a lot of my supplies, New England cheesemaking supplies. Anyway, they both got back to me, and I'm following their instructions. I'm turning the cheese more frequently, and the mold is growing back, Andy. So I don't know, another week, 10 days or so, I will wrap the cheeses and then let them age still until the end of the month, at the end of January, that is. And then hopefully I'll do a video showing you what they're like. Well, I'm going to finish my lunch here and do some more reading, and then I'll go back to the house. I'll give you one more shot of what the snow looks like on my way back home. One of the chubby little mourning doves. I have large flocks of those. A few minutes ago there was a visit by both the male and the female cardinal. Very briefly, once again, no chance to get the camera going. I'm not sure who's watching who. This woodpecker always lights in the window box and watches me through the window for a while before he goes over and gets some seed. Maybe he stores some of his seeds in the window box, I don't know. Every once in a while he makes a pounding noise down in the bottom of it anyway. Look who's back. That's the male. Male northern cardinal. Oops. I'm hand holding the camera, obviously. Well, dear. There we go. He's over in the window box. That's the female cardinal in there. That is the rose bush, and she's eating the little rose hips. I'm glad to see it's being used as food by more different kinds of birds. This is a junco, I think. Maybe it's a sparrow. Yeah, a little sparrow. And that is the male cardinal, if I can find him. Just flew back. He'd been over to the feeder. He certainly shows up beautifully against the snow. Well, this video is going to be hours long if I don't stop. I'm just about to leave. Get a shot maybe of the cabin from outside if there isn't enough blustering snow to ruin everything. I'll use that as the thumbnail, hopefully, for this video. Well, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this partial day in the cabin, or full day, I guess, more than a day now. And there he goes. No. Anyway, bye-bye. I'll talk to you in my next video. Thank you for watching.